Pirkei Avos, whenever it quotes a teaching from one of the Tanaim, it says, for example, Shimon HaTzadik Haya Mishar Anshe Knesset Agdola. Shimon HaTzadik was from the remnants of the Anshe Knesset Agdola. Hu Haya Omer, he used to say. And we find that expression of the teachings of the different Tanaim throughout Pirkei Avos. Hu Haya Omer. It mentions the name of the person, who he was, and then it says he used to say Hu Haya Omer. And I've always thought that maybe the message here, maybe a kind of hidden meaning in this, is that what the Mishnayos are teaching us is that these messages, these teachings of the Tanaim, of these tzaddikim, weren't even necessarily things that they spoke out with their mouth. It wasn't that they used to say it, because if that's what the Mishnah was saying, it could have just said Shimon HaTzadik Haya Omer. Shimon HaTzadik used to say, but it doesn't say that. It says Shimon HaTzadik was this individual. Hu Haya Omer, he used to say. Maybe the meaning here is that he as a person used to say this, meaning his life taught this, his life embodied this. He taught this not by using words, not by preaching, not by giving sermons or lectures or giving over ideas, but he taught this by living it, by living his life in the way that he conducted himself, the way he carried himself, as it actually says in Pirkei Avos, having this abig ba'afar raglaim, that the way you learn from tzaddikim is by clinging to the dust of their feet, following them on the road, following them on their travels. This is why Torah Sheba'al Peh initially was never meant to be written down. The oral tradition, the oral Torah, was not going to be written down, because if it wasn't written down in a book, the only way you could ever learn Torah Sheba'al Peh was to learn it from somebody else's mouth, from being with another person, in which case you would have to have a relationship with that person. You would have to see the way that they lived, which is why in the Gemara, the way that the Talmidim, the students, used to learn from their Rabbeim wasn't only in a base medrash. It wasn't only in a kind of sterile environment. They learned from them on the street. They learned from them being in their homes, watching them interact with their wives, with their children, with people in a store, seeing them travel, seeing them do things, that the only way to learn Torah from them was to be with them, with the person that they were. Hu Haya Omer. It could be that Shimon HaTzadik never even said these words, but Hu Haya Omer, his life taught this. And I think that we all know as parents, especially if you're a parent of a little kid, if you want to get your kid to play with something, if you want your child to play with Lego or blocks or whatever it is, you can tell them to play with it. You can, hey, want to go play with this, the chances of them going and doing it are slim. But if you get down on the floor and you start playing with the Lego, much greater chance that they're going to actually start playing with the Lego. And I think that's true for the bigger goals we have with passing on messages and values to our children also. The story is told of the Kotzker Rebbe that an individual once came to him and asked him for a bracha. Rebbe, can I have a bracha that my children should be Talmidei Chachamim? And the Kotzker Rebbe said the problem is that if you're coming and asking for a bracha for your children to be Talmidei Chachamim, then your children are just going to be individuals who go to a Rebbe and ask for their children to be Talmidei Chachamim, because whatever you're doing is more likely what your children's going to be doing. And so the real question the Kotzker Rebbe said is, I'll give you a bracha, but I can only give you a bracha that's going to have any significance if you are also yourself learning and engaged in the process and the striving of becoming a Talmid Chacham. Then the bracha could have some significance, but otherwise it's just gonna repeat itself. It's very similar to a story of the Brisker Rav, that an individual once came to him and said, started to complain, we just moved to a new neighborhood, a new area in which people are not keeping Shabbos the way that we do, and I'm very worried for my children. It's going to influence them. I don't know what's going to be on my children. Are they going to get swept up in this? And the Brisker Rav was getting very upset, and he said, why do you keep talking about your children? What about yourself? What about the impact it's going to have on you? Why are you only worried about your children? And I think this is a really important piece, that in chinuch and in raising children, to think about the Hu Haya Omer. What are we teaching them just by the way that we're living, the way that we are engaged into our mitzvahs, and that when we do that for ourselves, when it's sincere and genuine and authentic and we are immersed in it, it just spills over. It spills over onto our children around us, and we don't need to pressure, we don't need to force, we don't need to teach it or preach it in a sermon kind of a way, but simply because if we're on the floor playing with Legos, they're going to want to be on the floor playing Legos with us.